50% of the population gets their news from social media, which so many people follow fitness influencers that look amazing, have aspirational bodies, but then maybe they're preaching ways, tactics, methodology to achieve said body in ways that may or may not actually have any substantial or evidence-based reasoning behind it. Welcome to In the Grand Scheme of Fitness, episode 58. We're almost there. We're making real progress, Ethan. My name is Justin Schollard.
And I am Ethan Wolf.
And we are your co-host. I guess I was going to say co-host, but
we're
your co-host. We are the co-hosts.
We are co-hosting.
And today, guys, we're going to be talking about, just not to basically social media and how I think we most of us get our news. I think they were saying something like 50% of the population gets their news from social media, which isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It really just kind of depends on the source.
Yeah.
But in our industry in particular, so many people follow fitness influencers that look amazing, have aspirational bodies, but then maybe they're preaching ways, tactics, methodology to achieve said body in ways that may or may not actually have any substantial or evidence-based reasoning behind it. It's just they have good genetics. They would have looked great if no matter what they did. And so we just got to be careful about that stuff. So we're going to kind of dig into that today and just sort of like talk about our own experiences with it and just sort of like how you guys can make sure that you don't fall into the trap of watching someone's highlight reel, because let's be honest, Instagram, TikTok, it's people's, especially in the fitness space, it's people's highlight reels.
Of course, yeah.
When they are like finishing a cut and all of a sudden they take a bunch of different pictures of themselves and post them over the next 3 months. It's like that is a sliver of reality, but to be taken with a little grain of salt as well. So anyway, one thing that I will say that we kind of talked about when we were getting ready for the show is that when we look at people who we aspire to be like physically, we look at how strong they are, how fast they are, how lean they are, or like whatever, we have to understand that. Let me give you guys an example. Like Michael Phelps is a good swimmer because he's 6'4" and has a 7-foot wingspan, and so there's just a genetic component that we can't avoid and we can't escape. And if we're looking at people aspirationally, we just have to make sure that we're doing it in a way where it's like we understand that A, we're watching highlight reels, and B, there's a genetic component that we just may or may not ever have. And so as long as we can extrapolate that down and take what works and leave what doesn't, apply it to our life, probably not the worst thing, but just a lot of people are, I think, drinking the Kool-Aid a little too much on what is or isn't based off of something that is just a genetic lottery.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like another way to look at it, which is the swimmer's body is an example I've heard specifically for this idea, is that people might want to look a certain way. And so they look at a swimmer's body, they look like a bodybuilder and they're like, oh, they're too big and bulky, or they look like a long distance runner, marathon runner along there. It's like, oh, they're kind of too lean and withered, or, they look like, or not, withered, but they just don't, that's not the look I want either. And then they might look at like a swimmer's body and be like, oh, they kind of have those like long muscles. They look a certain way. So
they look toned.
Yeah, they have that. They just got, that's kind of that middle ground I'm looking for. And so then they'll go and they'll be like, well, if they're a swimmer, I'll start swimming, because obviously the swimmer swimming that's the modality. That's what's going to get me there.
Yeah.
Then they swim for a year and that might be in better shape. They might have even lost body fat, but realistically, they're probably not going to look like that swimmer ideology in terms of aesthetics that they thought they were going to. And that's because of that exact point that the swimmers are genetically dispositioned. It's like a linebacker is a linebacker, not probably because of the way he trains, but because he was born a linebacker.
Because he's, 5'11" and 230 pounds and can back squat 450 and like jump 50 inches in the air, Yeah, you can train and everyone can improve through training.
You can use the modalities, but I think it's having a realistic expectation of what the outcome is. And so it's like if you want to train strongman because you like the sensation of lifting a sandbag or an odd object or doing farmer carries and you feel stronger and it's going to be good for you. I mean, I think any training of any type is good, whether it's swimming or anything. But realistically, if you're not built like a strongman, you're probably not going to have strongman numbers.
Yeah.
And do strongman feats. You might train like a strongman, you might get the benefits from it. That's not a bad thing, but I wouldn't necessarily expect the outcome of being in the caliber of a strongman. And so I think it's like whether it's performance-based or aesthetic-based, is having like all of the modalities are good. Any movement's good. I'll encourage any avenue. I think it's just more of like what the realistic expectations are and why are you doing it, and are you doing it because you enjoy it or because you're expecting a certain outcome, and then is that, if you're doing it for outcome based, is that outcome like based in reality? You know, is there...
And then that's like an aesthetic thing too. It's like they are that way, less of their training, and the training has a lot to do with it, but more of like at some point in their life, a coach been like, hey, you have the body of a swimmer, like you could probably go far.
Yeah.
And then they oriented their life around achieving high levels in that sport. But I think also probably more common, a little bit more subtle, is when it's not just about like fitness, but then it kind of turns into like a health conversation of like, oh, well, this person online says that carbohydrates are bad and they're in really good shape. They don't eat carbs, so then it must be that like carbs are bad, right? Or maybe I should consider giving up carbs. Or one that I've been seeing is like this girl in a whole spandex outfit lifting weights, talking about not all creatine is the same. And if you're not taking the right creatine, then you're not going to get results. And then, of course, her body's amazing.
Yeah.
And so she's selling like $100 creatine gummy that's supposed to be something about differently. When the reality is that creatine is a commodity and anyone can get monohydrate for like $1 on Amazon, and it works so the exact same. And I think that when we see people like that, people talking about different beauty products and they just so happen to be beautiful. So
right, exactly. Yeah,
maybe that's the secret. It's just this lotion or whatever. The creatine gummies, because she's got a big butt and she takes these. So maybe if I take them, I'll have a thin waist and a big butt too.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know if the creatine came first in this equation. Probably not. I think that there probably a lot of stuff that happened before.
I was going to say, I'm sure
that endorsement deal came along for her.
She was turning heads before creatine ever came into the picture.
You know, and so it's just like, be wary of it. It's like, man, because it comes in different, like this, the same package in different wrapping all the time with like, oh, this chiropractor is now selling these detoxes. And it's like validation enough? Oh, he's a chiropractor, so it must be okay. But if you think about it, like, well, what does that have to do with like a juice cleanse, though? You know?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, 100%. When I especially think when there's products involved, it's extra tricky just because you have endorsements and paid, you know, advertising through individuals. And then, you know, anytime there's profits involved in that capacity, it's like you always got to look out for the snake oil, or just, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, how much is that girl getting paid by that company?
For sure. It's not her brand.
To sell those creatine gummies, you know, just because she's hot. And they probably looked through,
of course,
however many thousands of influencers that were hot and were like, oh, look at you. Okay, we'll choose you. And then just because, you know, everybody has that built into them.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got a price, right?
Well, and so, I mean, what I mean by that is like anybody, you see somebody beautiful or in shape or something that we aspire to, and it automatically influences us.
So true.
We are magnetized, or whether they're smart or they're hot or they're super lean. It's like we automatically are like, oh, that has validity now. And so especially for products, it's like, oh man, you really got to watch. And again, it's like, you know, if somebody's selling, like, cause there's some doctor, you know, one of my clients was a doctor that had this like kind of some type of basically fasted cleanse thing. You know, fundamentally it was just like 500 calorie a day fasting period, you know, and they sent you the food, they sent you some soup, and they sent you some this. And like, again, there are benefits to decrease calories.
Like she was a doctor selling it to her patients?
No. She was somebody who did the cleanse.
Who did the cleanse.
Like, she was like, the doctor was their friend. And it seemed like the doctor seemed like a legitimately educated individual. And it's just, again, it's one of those things, like there's this gray area. Like we all know that like restricted calories are good for you no matter what. So whether or not, in my opinion, you're doing a 5-day fast, that's going to have a benefit, or you're doing long-term calorie restriction. Like it just shows that like the less we eat, the more healthy we are. And so it comes in many forms. And is there going to be benefit from doing 500 calories a day for 5 days? Yeah, I think that just like in a general sense, there is going to be more good than
the less
harm.
we eat, to an extent, obviously.
Yeah,
like
obviously
you
to
can't,
an extent.
You can't live off of 500 calories.
But that's why it's a short thing. But I'm saying, so like, like if somebody did that, I don't think they're going to be worse off. Like I don't think they're going to come on the other side of that less healthy. I think there's going to be somewhat benefits. But is it a good modality for losing weight? No. You know what I mean? And I think that most people would look at that as a form of weight loss. I know that's what she did. It was just like, oh, I got to lose a few pounds. Let me do another round of this situation. And so it's like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but maybe you're doing it for, insulin sensitivity. Maybe you're doing it for the benefits of fasting and hormone regulation. But most of I would say 99% of people are probably doing it for weight loss, and it's probably a really poor option for weight loss. And so there's just so much potential for gray, and I think that people are uneducated and they assume one thing about this and they assume one thing about the other, and there's so much information out there. And I don't one of the things I want to say is I don't think all influencers are bad.
No, not at all.
I think there's, especially in the fitness industry, I think right now I'm seeing there is kind of this reduction in the sauce of what is scientifically sound and what is effective. And
totally agree.
There is kind of like a camp of individuals that are moving towards
more evidence-based.
More evidence-based.
There's evidence-based is definitely emerging more mainstream now with all the PhDs and, just real scientists out there who are going like, no.
Yeah.
And then there's, I think what it was is like, if you saw this like huge cohort, like in the early aughts and like the 2010s area, where it was kind of like the Wild West of social media, and it was like, oh, I can just say things, people will just like follow them. Oh, and then you got all these blowhards up there.
It's like, I just eat like a pint of raspberries a day, and that's all you need to do.
Like raspberry ketones if you want to lose weight, that's all, right?
Yeah.
And like it was like, well, okay, maybe. And then I think what was happening is like, real scientists probably just didn't. They might have been a little bit of a later adopter of social media because they're not. They were probably getting their PhDs. While these other chumps were just on there, but like, well, I'm just gonna say things and see what happens.
Right.
And then now you're seeing this next wave, this next gen, where all these really smart and another thing is like, you just continue following the right people, and then the algorithms continue to send you the right people.
Right.
You keep following, zealots that are preaching whatever, their dogma, and the Instagram goes, oh, he likes the crazy ones. Keep sending him more of these people to follow. And then all of a sudden your whole feed is just all these crazies, and you get siloed off into your own echo chamber, and you think that like that's just what everyone sees.
Well, yeah, there's I got 30 people telling me to eat raw, eat raw cow brain,
and so now you're seeing this huge movement of like, just the right people coming up, evidence-based, which, by the way, if you're just, that's really what you want to look for. Is like, is this real? Is this clinical? Or is this anecdotal? Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, is this guy just making shit up because whatever? Or is it like researched and published and there's actually studies around it? Because let me tell you something. Fitness and health and weight loss and nutrition is the most researched topic in the world.
Yeah.
So trust me, if there is a question out there, there is a PubMed study that you can go and read and educate yourself and find the right people who can, distill that information down into their content. But yeah, I totally agree that like we're just kind of this next generation of influencers where it's like serious people that are data driven and evidence based, and like they're putting out the right information.
Which is awesome. But what I also will say is that tends to be also kind of boring. I mean, we do our best, I would say.
Sensational,
exactly. Sure. On our little show here to do our best to stick to what we know to be evidence-based and
we
factual.
know it's boring, but we do it
anyways. But but it's like there's a degree of like the message is repeated and often the same because there's no really way out of it or around it. There is no magic bullet. There is no secret gem of information that's going to do the thing. It's pretty much this is the path. And so it kind of, I don't use the word redundant, but it's pretty simple. Not simple, but it's straightforward. And I think what happens is like the shiny extremism catches people's eye.
Yep.
And so to hear somebody be like, oh, 5, 10, 20% calorie deficit, or do 10,000 steps, or do resistance training and track your calories and just do that over and over and over again. Like, okay, cool. Like I get the message. But then you got somebody in the corner over here that's just like, psst, what you don't realize is that if you drink hot lemon water first thing in the morning, and then you don't eat until 10 a.m., and then you avoid any carbohydrate, all these kind of extremes, and Liver
and
King,
take some peptides.
Like just eat your raw bone marrow and your heart and your liver every day, and that's just going to take care of everything.
It's gonna fix it.
Yeah, and so I think there is the sensationalism, and so people get kind of pulled in that, and then like you were just saying, there is that echo chamber of the algorithm where they just funnel you in, and I think it's like shiny, odd, extreme, fun, weird, zany things are appealing to our mind. And I think it's easy for that to catch somebody's eye.
Totally.
And them to fall down the rabbit hole versus just like count your calories, you know? And so I think that's one of the pitfalls of social media. And it's like, you know, mere exposure effect is, you know, the phenomenon of accepting something you're exposed to more and more.
Yeah.
Just it's a literally documented
it's like the law
social psychology
of
situation
proximity or something like that.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, so if like the first time somebody says like, I don't know, freaking anything, like going to bed
broccoli's
early.
bad.
Yeah, broccoli's bad. You're like, no, broccoli's great. But you hear broccoli's bad enough and you might start to consider it. And then all of a sudden you might say, is broccoli bad for you? And then all of a sudden you find an article that talks about how this one person said that when they ate broccoli, they broke out in hives. And then next thing you know, you're just like, all vegetables are bad for you. Fiber is bad. And the anti-nutrients and the leptins and, you know, you just go down the rabbit hole of like, man, there's just so many people out there that are, I mean, it's crazy, these influencers that, you know, like I watched this one doctor, this guy, Dr. Ids, who does everything science-based, peer-reviewed, and he basically just debunks influencers that are, especially
Thank God, bless his heart.
Yeah, especially in the nutrition industry. And it's just like, wow, you got these people just like using fear so much. And so this is another big one, is like fear-based kind of funneling of your belief system, right? They like it's such a big trend right now to see people going around like the supermarkets and like pulling a thing off the shelf and just being like, all right, let's take a look at these
silent catastrophe, like
like let's look at let's look at these oats. Okay, well, what you'll notice here is that there's you know, sulfur added, and you're like, well, did you know that sulfur is and it's just like, it's such a weird world because fear definitely is a very effective motivator. And what you'll always notice is that somewhere down the line they're selling something. Somewhere down the line they're sponsored or something, and they're really, in my opinion, just like using fear and nonsense and all these tactics to funnel you into that echo chamber and to their belief system to get you to buy something and spend some money.
You know, it just taps into like our primal brain of just like think about, you know, back before we had, you know, modern technology where we could share information and the click of a button, where it was just stories that got told, and you go to these villages and these ignorant people had no idea, and you'd sell them, oh, well, this elixir here.
Exactly, the old Snickers.
Like old Timmy here who couldn't walk, and then he'd take one sip of this, and then they wheel somebody out in a wheelchair, give him a sip, and he jumps up and he says,
starts tap dancing.
You know, and now the new version of that is, you know, when people don't understand something, then they're just susceptible to this, and you start saying big words and you string them together in a way that's semi-coherent, and people tend to believe you, and they get afraid, and then, you know, next thing you know, they're pulling their wallet out, and it's crazy, but it's true. And so anyways, like, I think that like the solution to this is really like categorizing entertainment versus education. As this guy, I'm not going to listen to I'm not going to take anything he says as truth. I just think he's funny, like the Liver King.
Yeah, I'll enjoy some Liver King videos.
Well, if you just want to like watch a video of him like simultaneously eating like a bull testicle while he's like shooting with his gun on his ranch in Texas, bless your heart, go for it. But don't buy his supplements. Like, come on, like he's full of shit. He's on steroids. He's, you know, it's like none of that is because he eats raw bulls. He just takes steroids, and so that's why he looks that way. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you got people who are like PhDs on Instagram and YouTube who are saying some real shit, spouting out some fucking knowledge, and it's like, you know what? This guy's good. He can go to like the education camp, and I think that we're not. Phones and social media probably aren't going away anytime soon. And so I just would encourage everyone to like consider their news feed design. So consider news feed design. Follow people who inspire you. Sure, have the characters that just entertain you, but like it should be at 80-20. It should be 20% just entertainment, but then like 80% of your news feed should be people that truly educate you and challenge your thoughts around what's, you know, like, and show real evidence on the latest studies around the things you're wondering about, or have really solid information. Like, because if you do that, then it's like next thing you know, you're on social media and it's like you have a feed full of like mentors in a way. It's like great relationship coach. He's talking about how to rethink, conversations with your significant other. Oh, that's a really helpful tip. The next person is like a PhD in nutrition who's talking about like, hey, don't believe this crap. It's not true. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Just keep it simple. Oh, that's a good point too. And now it's like your experience with social media isn't so like sensational. It's like, It's just like, oh, I actually finished that 10-minute scroll sesh, like kind of learning something, And so redesigning that newsfeed, I think is super important at the further we go down this rabbit hole of social media.
100%. Yeah. Cause it was actually I was just listening to like a financial podcast that I mentioned on the way over.
Yeah.
And basically what the host was saying to the guy just, basically, but the host was saying that there's a lot of information because the guy he was like a trucker and he drives all day. And so he's like, yeah, but I've really educated myself on finances. I've really improved my financial awareness and prowess over the last however many years. And really, he had no idea still what he was talking about. Yeah. And the guy was just like, oh, but I have like the information. And the host was like, there's a lot of information out there, but some of it's good and some of it's bad. Mm-hmm. Right. So you might be listening to a podcast on finances, and you might be obtaining information or knowledge, so to speak, but like that knowledge might not be correct or effective knowledge. And I think in the end, social media as a whole is going to encompass all things that politics and relationships, but what I would say about health and fitness is that there's a science behind it. So like relationships, obviously there's educated people that are therapists, there's modalities, but the human design, there's different personalities, there's different compatibilities, there's a lot more I think of like dynamics that could go into that, but things that could help. But for me, I think with like health and fitness that it's pretty straightforward. There's not really a lot of wiggle room. And so like politics, yeah, you might have different belief systems, the policies, you might have a different opinion on the policy. Like there's a lot more room for stuff. But I think for the most part,
general health and fitness.
Like
we're not talking like a cohort of like cancer survivors or like diabetics or postmenopause. We're talking like just general well-being and fitness. And so in other words,
it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty science-backed. Totally. There's not really a lot of wiggle room. And so I think having some critical thinking and getting yourself on a good path of education will start to lead you down a road where you can start to like hear through the noise pretty easily, I mean, if you were just like listen to a podcast that had two health and fitness professionals on it that, might know what they're talking about a little bit.
Happen to have a 10-day detox we're launching. So if you're interested.
But really, I think that's the thing with health and fitness specifically is that there isn't a lot of wiggle room based on the science.
There isn't. And, and like, here's the thing. You can look at that two ways of like, well, then why would I need to listen to you guys? Well, the thing is that like, even like mastery is essentially understanding the nuances of something better and better as you go. And so it's like, yes, there are proteins, carbs, and fats. There are calorie ceilings. There's kind of like base, daily activity we should all do. We should all exercise. We should all do some sort of resistance training. Those are all the sort of generals that you'll hear us repeat constantly. But then the nuance is now, here's my life. And now how do I take these like pretty straightforward pillars of health,
right,
and then apply that into my unique situation? And that's where the listener now needs to, get to that point where it's like, okay, I understand all this stuff, but like there's a difference between conceptual understanding and tacit understanding. Conceptual understanding is I read a book on finances and I understand. I get the concept. I get it.
Yeah, I was probably the guy on the radio,
but
the
tacit
podcast.
is I applied these principles in this book for a year and I demonstrably improved my financial situation through this system. That's tacit experience. Like, that's tacit understanding and tacit experience. Like, I did it. And so you'll hear us repeat the same shit over and over again, guys. Like, often we don't need to be taught new things. We need to be reminded of the principles of life and the foundational principles of life. And so it's like, now what are you going to do with that information? You're going to apply it, or are you just, is this just infotainment that you hear and you're like, oh, that's a good point, but you don't actually do anything.
Yeah,
right?
It's like the practical application of something, right? It's like you can have inherent knowledge about it, but it's like if you understand, like, oh, okay, yes, I need to be in a caloric deficit in order to lose body fat. That's a pretty straightforward statement. Makes It's a pretty simple idea. Makes sense. You could tell that to, I'd say, probably most people, and they'd immediately be like, I understand.
That makes perfect sense.
Totally. So now they have that knowledge, but then to live that,
right?
How do you apply that to your particular lifestyle, your eating habits, your dietary restrictions, your preferences is a whole other gamut, right? So it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Just eat less calories.
Got it.
Okay, so what's that look like for you?
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to do that? What's the actual lived
strategy?
Experience? Yeah. So.
And then it's also like, okay, understand that I need to eat, 500 calories less than what my body burns. All that sounds good. Maybe even you take the step and maybe even try it. But now you find yourself fucking hungry. And I didn't expect this.
Wait a second.
Wait a second. I feel hungry and cranky. And now I don't have the tools, like the self-development and the mindset training and the tools to understand what's going on and to see myself in the situation instead of just like being in it and reacting to my emotions, but able to punch back a layer or two and just witness this and be like, it's okay. I'm hungry, but I'm not starving.
Right.
It stands to reason. I ate a little bit less. My body's going to be like, hey, buddy, you want that ice cream
Well, it's just
bowl?
increased ghrelin levels.
Yeah, right. And so, well, it is.
Yeah,
and so, those are the layers of nuance that if we allow ourselves to go down these very basic principles, but we allow ourselves to kind of go deeper into them, then we understand these deeper levels of nuance that come with a simple calorie deficit, right? Yep. Or whatever. And so that's the game. Very straightforward foundational pillars. The breadth isn't so crazy, but the depth, I would argue, is very, very long.
Right. Yeah, I feel that.
And you have to experience yourself through vacations and summers and falls and winters and holidays and birthdays and challenge these impulses and cravings. And that's where we create mastery on very simple principle of just eating less food.
There it is.
Boom.
So don't listen to influencers. Listen to us.
But give us a follow if you like this kind of information.
Smash that like button and follow button. Leave a comment below if this resonates with you. And if it doesn't resonate with you, also leave a comment and tell us why.
Don't forget to share with your friends. All right, guys. That was 58 of In the Grand Scheme of Fitness. We'll check you all next week. Peace out.
Peace.